Hi, thank you for joining us and welcome to this installment of David W. Klasing's Clarifying Tax Situations.
Why should you consider hiring an attorney rather than any other type of tax professional to represent you in an audit, whether that be IRS, EDD, FTB, or BOE? Well, first of all, you need to understand that if you don't agree with the government's take on the facts in your case or the legal results in your case, their take on the law, their take on the facts, guess what's going to wind up happening? You're going to wind up owing tax, and the government, whether it be federal or state, always has a horrible disposition towards viewing the facts and the law in a manner that produces additional tax liability. Which means at the end of an audit, quite often, the audit is followed by a tax controversy. The tax controversy is you don't agree with the position that the government has taken, whether it be federal or state, same deal. This can be about one of two things. It can be about money, it could be about penalties, or it can be about potential criminal liability and money. It can be about both. If there's an understatement in that return the government believes was caused by willful intent, whether that be the federal government or the state government, it can be about more than just money. Why not have somebody involved from the very beginning that if it's just about money and it needs to be appealed or litigated, you got somebody on board from the very beginning that's very adept at doing that. The prices of my firm are very comparable to other firms that don't have my qualifications. Well, attorneys have additional education beyond that of a CPA. The typical CPA has 4 years of education. An atypical CPA adds a master's degree of taxation onto that, which I've done. And I can tell you this, that there's only 24,000 professionals in the nation that became a CPA and then became an attorney afterward. Matter of fact, there's 1.2 million attorneys in this country, 480,000 CPAs, only 24,000 are both. I'm one of 24,000 professionals in the country that have my educational skill set. Matter of fact, when you take a master's degree in taxation, it's more like 3,000 professionals in the nation that have my skill set. Educationally, now we haven't even talked about work experience on top of that. We're all the product of our work environment. I did high-level auditing as an auditor, everything from IPOs, private placements, nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, multi-state conglomerates, you name it, I've dealt with it. Employee benefit plans, VIBAs. I've seen a lot in my career. Okay, that was on the audit side. On the tax side, I've dealt with everything from AMT to consolidated conglomerate corporate tax returns. I've seen a lot. I've dealt with REITs, I've dealt with partnerships, I've dealt with a lot of different things in my career. Frankly, attorneys have superior advocacy and litigation skills due to their specialized training in the law. In my opinion, tax attorneys are simply in the best position to advise and defend clients and individuals and businesses in a tax controversy. Ultimately, it's going to be your power to persuade and your knowledge of the law and your ability to craft the facts of the law into a legal result that's beneficial to your client that's going to determine success or failure. Attorneys are the best trained at this. Attorneys bring to the table a number of significant benefits beyond that of the average CPA or EA. We have in-depth knowledge of the law, legal research, and tax procedure. We have specialized training in the art of persuasion and negotiation. That is inbred into the skill set of being an attorney, how to persuade and negotiate. CPAs aren't trained in this. We have 3 or more years of postgraduate formal education beyond the average CPA. 4 years of education for a CPA, 7 years for the attorney. You add a master's degree to that, 9 years of formal education compared to 4. Attorney-client privilege. CPAs and EAs and CTEC certified and any other type of tax professional out there besides an attorney does not bring to the table attorney-client privilege. If there's an underlying issue in an audit that could be viewed as criminal, you need attorney-client privilege. I've discussed this in several other videos. I'm not going to beat it to death here. Ultimately, if the controversy cannot be settled through an appeal following an audit, you're going to wind up in tax court litigating your issue. Well, only an attorney can represent you in tax court. Why not have an attorney from the very get-go in your audit so that if ultimately you don't agree with the position taken by the IRS, the BOE, the FTB, the EDD, you're in a position to fight it in a court of law and get the result that's fair and just to you. Lastly, the State Bar of California maintains very strict licensing standards that guarantee you some minimal level of competence in a professional. You can read my testimonials. I'm way beyond minimal competence. I'm very, very good at what I do. I like to think of myself as a samurai. Let me fight for you. Why should you hire an attorney to take you through your audit? Well, ultimately, quite often following an audit is an unhappy client that is looking at tax liability. And even if I've done a really, really good job through the audit process, that happens quite often. All right? The government has a tendency to look at the facts and the law in a way that benefits them and adds to your tax liability. How are you going to win that appeal? Well, you're going to have to settle your case if necessary. How does the settlement process work? The government weighs the hazards of litigation against the tax liability that they've assessed during, or they're attempting to assess during the audit. An example, a $100,000 assessment the government is proposing through the audit. If you can convince the IRS appeals agent through my actions as your attorney that you have a 50% winning in subsequent litigation, they might be willing to just cut the liability from $100,000 to $50,000 based on that 50% chance of prevailing. Only an attorney can get them to accurately weigh the hazards of litigation. Hiring an attorney as opposed to an EA, CPA, CTEC certified, any other type of representative tells the IRS or the taxing authority from the very get-go that you're serious about being treated fairly and you will litigate if necessary to get what the legal result that is fair and just to you. Okay? Why not have the samurai on your team from the very get-go? Oftentimes, if the government does not believe they have a chance of prevailing in court, it takes an attorney to get them to see that. It takes an attorney to get them to compromise the liability down from the $100,000 to the $50,000 in the example I used earlier. Hiring an attorney from the get-go lets the IRS know, or the BOE or the EDD or the FTB, that you are serious about litigating from the very get-go if you have to, and you're much more likely to get a fair result. Hiring an attorney from the get-go of your audit helps you avoid excessive civil and, God help you, criminal liability. If you've cheated on your return, you know it, or there's an error in that underlying return that could be viewed as criminal, hire an attorney. Hire somebody that's beyond an attorney, a CPA with a master's in tax that's received specific training in criminal tax defense. That's me. Because attorneys are specifically trained in the law, they can help spot issues of IRS misconduct or misinterpretation of the law that other types of tax professionals are much less likely to recognize are occurring. This can significantly reduce your civil and criminal liabilities. Ultimately, if badges of fraud are discovered in your fact pattern, there's an underlying situation that smacks of tax fraud to the government, an attorney is in the best position to determine if an underlying criminal investigation has been going on from the beginning of the audit or has been handed off during the audit to the Criminal Investigation Division. They're in the best position to protect your interests and look to possibly equitable or other non-tax related defenses on your behalf. Why specifically should you consider hiring the tax law offices of David W. Klasing to represent you in an IRS, Franchise Tax Board, State Board of Equalization, or EDD audit? Well, very few professionals in the country have my education to begin with. 1.2 million attorneys in the country, 480,000 CPAs, only 24,000 like professionals in the country are both an attorney and a CPA simultaneously. Add a master's degree in taxation into that mix, you're down to about 3,000 like professionals. I'm estimating this, all right? One of the biggest concerns I get from my clients before they hire me, I get this question a lot. Dave, I really want to hire you, but I'm afraid that if I hire you, it's going to send a signal to the government that I've lawyered up. And matter of fact, if they really look at your website like I have, they're going to realize that you do criminal tax defense. And that's going to send a signal to the government that I've lawyered up, and I've lawyered up with a criminal tax defense attorney. Well, let me tell you what I tell my clients is, first of all, only about 30% of what I do is criminal in nature. That leaves 70% of the representation I work is straight civil. I always keep the government guessing. They do not know whether I've got an underlying criminal issue in that case or whether I'm just dealing with a straight civil issue. The last thing I'm going to do is allow you to admit it. The last thing I'm going to do is admit it. If they see fraud, I don't want to hand them the nails to put in your coffin, all right? Oftentimes I think they see fraud, they know fraud when they see it, but it's one thing for them to see fraud, it's quite another for them to come at you with a civil fraud penalty, which is 75% addition to tax. So if they are after you for $100,000 of tax liability, you're looking at $175,000 rather than just $100,000, or jail time. I tell my clients that optimally, the best result I can possibly get you in an audit is what's called a no change. The government comes in, audits you, they don't have any proposed changes, they accept the return is filed. That is extremely rare. I've only had that happen twice in my career since I started my practice, and both of those returns that I prepared. Audits are stressful. Even with the best representative in the world, audits are arduous, stressful. They're an intimidating process that ultimately lead to additional tax liability being assessed, compounded by penalties and interest by the taxing authorities. Why not go through that process with somebody who's been through it multiple times, that can help you with the stress, that can give you peace of mind that you're going to get the best result possible in that situation. The absolute worst case scenario in audit is the audit can result to a handoff to the Criminal Investigation Division for criminal prosecution. Why not do everything in your power to minimize that possibility, even if you don't believe that there's a reasonable possibility they could assess that? Why not put an insurance policy in place just to be sure? Perhaps the most compelling reason to hire the tax law offices of David W. Klasing to take you through an audit is that the taxing authorities themselves have access to a plethora of CPAs and attorneys that work for them. Why not give yourself the same advantage? Why not hire somebody that's a CPA and attorney simultaneously with a master's degree in tax and 20 years of experience to give yourself the edge in an audit? If there's lots of money at stake, there's potentially lots of tax liability at stake, the cost of hiring an attorney can be minuscule compared to the damage caused by the audit. If the taxing authorities have access to CPAs and attorneys, why would you not avail yourself of the same advantage? I'm a tax attorney and a CPA with a master's in tax. I have over 20 years of experience. I've fought lots of battles with the IRS, the Franchise Tax Board, the EDD, the Board of Equalization, and my clients fare about as well as they possibly can in those situations. I have a long track record of good results in audits, and you don't have to just trust me. Look at the testimonials on my website. These are my clients talking to you. I do not write those things, my clients do. I've assisted literally hundreds, thousands of individuals and businesses through audits over my career. I have a proven track record of obtaining the optimal results possible based on each client's specific facts and circumstances. In an effort to bring myself to the cutting edge of the profession and have the tools available to me to get the best results for my clients in audits, I recently chaired the California State Bar Tax Procedure and Litigation Committee. I've also chaired the Orange County Bar Tax Section. I recently was the education chair for the American Association of Attorney CPAs. I've been a member at large of the California CPA Committee on Taxation. I am constantly attending educational events. I'm constantly publicly speaking. I'm constantly writing. I eat, breathe, and live tax. I absolutely love what I do, and I'd love the opportunity to help you. I am much more educated than any professional standard laid out there for a CPA or an attorney. I have strived in my career to stay on the cutting edge of tax. I want to be viewed as an attorney's attorney, a CPA's CPA, and I've worked very hard to do that. Okay, I've done that through my volunteer work and my education and my experience. In an effort to stay current, I participate in lots of online forums of CPAs, tax attorneys, business attorneys, estate planning attorneys. I constantly answer questions on AVO. I'm doing all this to be the very best practitioner I can be. So, in summary, the reason you want to hire myself, David W. Klasing, bottom line here is you would be hard-pressed to find a more experienced, educated, or qualified representative to represent you in an audit, an appeal following an audit, or ultimately in litigation over an audit. Thank you for the opportunity of earning your business.
Thank you so much again for your time and interest in how we may be able to help you. Please don't hesitate to call if something is worrying you. We would be very happy to help. Just call or email for a reduced rate consultation.